Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible. Sir.
But Ashok Acharya, sir, is not responding. Hello, sir. Acharya, sir. Am I audible?
Hello.
Hello. Yes, sir. Hello. Hello. Good morning, sir. How are you? Uh, you are watching me or not? Sir, your voice is not coming. Sorry, your voice is not coming, sir. Please, please check the connectivity.
हेलो
Hello. Yes, sir.
हाँ सर सुनाई जा रहे हैं हेलो
Uh,
आई कैन
now you are audible. Now you are
माय
audible.
यस यस आई कैन हियर यू सर
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. And very warm welcome to you also. You have joined at time exactly at 12:28, and we are also on YouTube, sir. This webinar is live telecast on YouTube. We are also on YouTube live telecast. Okay, Nivedhan, sir, we can start.
Yes, sir.
Everything is live
Yeah,
on YouTube,
yeah, sir.
and I am on screen. You are
Yes,
watching me because
yes, yes,
here
yes, sir.
the name Nivedhan Mato is coming. Your name is coming. So I am not seeing myself.
Actually, when I am speaking, then only my name is going. So you can continue, sir. No issue.
So what about the participants? They are watching me or not?
Sir, you can continue, sir.
I can continue.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, then start करता हूँ. A very warm welcome and very good morning to all of you. On behalf of the University Department of Chemistry, Dr. Syama Prasad Mukherjee University, I, Dr. Rajiv Ranjan, welcome you all. I welcome our Chief Patron, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Satyanarayan Munda, sir, Patron, Dean of Student Welfare, Dr. Namita Singh, ma'am, Co-Patron, Dr. A.K. Chaudhary, sir, Registrar, DSPMU, Dean of Sciences, Dr. A.K. Mato, sir, and members of the organizing committee, Dr. Khushi Dakhtar, Dr. Poonam Bhardwaj, Dr. Ashok Kumar Acharya, Dr. Vinod Kumar Chaudhary, sir, and Dr. Nivedan Mato, sir. A very warm welcome to our speakers, Dr. Shilpa Sharma, ma'am, from Raipur, and Dr. Riham Jalan, ma'am, from Syria. I welcome our international participants from UK, Israel, Russia, Brazil, South Africa, China, South Korea, Belgium, Egypt, Romania, Turkey, Morocco, Philippines, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and other countries. We have total 31 countries participants. Our webinar has become truly international, and we are getting interest from more than 31 countries. We have 1,550 participants from all major states of India, including more than 150 from Northeast states and including Tripura, Nagaland, Meghalaya, and Assam. This is very encouraging and enlightening for us. Now, this is a time to start our webinar, and our first speaker is Dr. Shilpa Sharma, ma'am. She is presently an assistant professor in Applied Chemistry Department of BIT, Raipur. She did her PhD from renowned institution, National Institute of Technology, Raipur. She has many research articles to his contribution. She has published in Web of Science and Scopus journals. Our second speaker is Dr. Riham Jalan. She is an engineer scientist working in GCSAR, General Commission of Scientific and Agricultural Research, Syria. Welcome to both of you, ma'am. And I am, and our team is very happy that we got such an speaker. And now I request our first speaker, Dr. Shilpa Sharma ma'am, to deliver her keynote lecture. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you
Thank you,
all.
sir. Thank you, sir. And good morning. Sorry, good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, before starting, I would like to thank. I would like to convey to my thanks to Vice Chancellor, Organizing Committee, and Dr. Ashok Kumar Acharya, Dr. Rajiv Ranjan sir, for inviting me in this big international webinar session. And the whole team is very prominent for organizing all these things. And today's my session is totally devoted on yes, today's my session is totally devoted on heavy metal contamination in soil and their remedial techniques. We will discussing about different type of contamination in soil and their reason behind why they are contaminated and what are the major remedial techniques of the soil contamination. Basically, soil may contaminated by the accumulation of heavy metal through the disposal of uh, heavy metal wastage, mining, and industrial process, agricultural practices such as excessive use of fertilizer, pesticides, animal manure, sewage sludge, combustion of coal, atmospheric deposition, etc. The most common heavy metals that are found in soil surface are lead, chromium, arsenic, zinc, cadmium, cobalt, mercury, etc. Right? Basically, soil is the major sink of heavy metal released by the various natural or anthropogenic activities. Most of the metal do not undergo microbial or chemical degradation. They accumulate on the soil surface, change
Ma'am,
their chemical form. Yes, sir?
ma'am, I think your slide is not presenting, not moving.
Sir, okay.
Yes, yes, no, it is okay. Continue.
Sir, it's not visible.
Yeah, it is visible, ma'am. Now it is visible.
Okay.
Please continue. Sorry for that. Thank you.
Okay. So, yes, we are talking about that soil is the major sink of heavy metal that is released from the natural or anthropogenic source. The problem here is that heavy metals do not undergo microbial or chemical degradation. They accumulate on the soil surface, change their chemical form, and damage the whole ecosystem. So here the question arises that what are the standard definition of heavy metals? So the standard definition of heavy metal is the heavy metals that are toxic metals are trace metal which pose risk to human health and having a density of at least 5 times that of water. Heavy metals are heavier 5 times that of water. Criteria used to define heavy metal includes density, atomic weight, position in periodic table, that is their atomic number. So first come with the what are the criteria? The criteria for defining heavy metal, first criteria is density. If the density of that particular metal is above than 3.5 gram per cubic centimeter, then it is said to be heavy metal. Again, the second criteria is the atomic weight. If the atomic weight is greater than 22.98, that is the atomic weight of sodium, or that is greater than 40, then that metal is considered as heavy metal. Third criteria is the atomic number, or we can say that the position of that particular metal in periodic table. So atomic number of heavy metals are generally greater than 20. Sometimes this is kept at 92. That is the atomic number of uranium. So these are the criteria for defining a heavy metal. In general, we can say that heavy metals are heavier, 5 times heavier than the water. So this is the common definition of heavy metal and the criteria that defines the heavy metal. Now coming to the category of heavy metal. Broadly, heavy metals are classified into two categories: essential heavy metals and non-essential heavy metals. First of all, we are talking about the essential heavy metals. Essential heavy metals needed in very low quantity, they are vital to the proper functioning of the various biological systems. The essential heavy metals includes iron, zinc, copper, selenium, cobalt, etc. Now coming to the non-essential heavy metal. These non-essential heavy metals occurs in the human body but have designated as non-essential or harmless below their threshold level. They are harmless if they are below the threshold levels, but if they are above the threshold levels, it may be possible they are lethal for human health or any living organism. The common examples of non-essential heavy metals are chromium, nickel, silicon. Okay. So these are the category, broadly classified category of heavy metal, that is essential and non-essential heavy metal. Now coming to the permissible limit of various type of heavy metals according to Indian standards. First of all, we will discuss about the zinc. The permissible level according to Indian standards of zinc is 300 to 600 microgram, but the permissible level of lead is 250 to 500 microgram per gram. Similarly, the permissible limit of copper is 135 to 270 microgram per gram, and the permissible limit of nickel is 75 to 150 microgram per gram. These are the common permissible limit according to Indian standards in micrograms per gram. Now coming to the cycling and source of heavy metals. We all know that heavy metals naturally occur in the soil and they formed by the natural weathering process of parent rock material. But due to the disturbance and acceleration of natural but slowly occurring geochemical cycle by men, soil of urban and rural area may accumulate one or more of the heavy metal. So this accumulation of heavy metal above than the defined background level and high enough to cause risk to plant, human, living organism and whole ecosystem. Most of the heavy metal liberated to environment by the industrial product, fuel combustion, fertilizers, pesticides, and these are the anthropogenic source of emission of heavy metal in atmosphere. And the second natural source is rock in earth and the rock in earth and crust. From these two natural and anthropogenic source, large amount of heavy metal deposited over the air, soil, and water. From air, soil, and water, these heavy metals are absorbed by plants. Sometimes these heavy metals from soil and water directly enter to the human body, and sometimes it is entered through a channel. The channel came from the plant and then animals. So the large amount of heavy metal that are deposited in air, soil, and water, it may be absorbed by plant or it may directly enter to the human body. If they are absorbed by the plant, then further it is spread over the birds, animals, or fishes. And finally, by the consumption of these animals, birds, or fishes, they entered into the human body. Or it may be possible by the consumption of plant itself, it is entered to the human body. After the completion of life cycle of humans or birds or animals, fishes, plants, again it is returns to the soil and water or air. So this is the natural cycling of the heavy metal and the major source of the heavy metal in the atmosphere. So large amount of heavy metal present in soil. Large amount of heavy metal that are present in soil due to anthropogenic activity or natural activity. Some of them are less poisonous, such as boron, copper, manganese, and zinc. And some of them are extremely toxic in nature, for example, cadmium and arsenic. Mercury, lead, nickel, fluoride are considered as moderately poisonous toxic metals that are present in atmosphere or soil surface. So we can say that heavy metal in the soil from anthropogenic source tend to be more mobile and cause risk to human health, plant, animal, and ecosystem. Heavy metal contamination in the soil is due to rapid man-made activities transferred from mines to random environmental location, and concentration of the metal is discharged products and relatively high compared to those in the receiving environment. So finally, we can say that the soil may become contaminated by the accumulation of heavy metal through emission from the rapidly growing industrial sector, transport sector, disposal of metallic waste, mine drilling, paints, by the use of fertilizers, animal manure, pesticide, wastewater irrigation in agricultural sector, sewage sludge, coal combustion in thermal power generation sectors, spillage of petrochemicals and atmospheric deposition. So these are the major source of heavy metal pollution on soil. Historically, agriculture was the first major human influence on the soil. Plant required many micronutrients and macronutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, calcium to grow and proper functioning of their physiology or completion the life cycle. Micronutrients are common example of micronutrients are cobalt, copper, iron, manganese, and molybdenum, etc. A part of this, in agricultural industry or agricultural practices, some of the other type of chemicals like fertilizer, pesticide, insecticide, weedicide are used, or some chemical or organic material are used to produce micro as well as macronutrients to the plants and increase the percentage yield of crops. So first comes to the chemical, that is fertilizer. Fertilizers are the material of natural or synthetic origin that is applied to the soil or to plant to supply one or more plant nutrient that is essential for the growth of plant. The common examples of macronutrients are nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, calcium, magnesium, while the common example of micronutrients are iron, manganese, nickel, cobalt, etc. Point to be remembered that excessive use of fertilizer can add cadmium or other type of very toxic and poisonous heavy metal to the soil, that is including mercury and lead, etc. Now coming to the second type of agrochemical that is widely used, that is pesticide. Pesticides are the chemical that are meant to control pests, including weeds. Generally, they contain copper, mercury, lead, or zinc. Example of such pesticides are, for example, such copper-containing fungicidal spray, lead arsenate that is used for fruit orchid, arsenic-containing compounds. They are potential to cause problem, particularly if sites are redeveloped for other agriculture or uh, non-agricultural purposes. Compared to the fertilizer, the use of pesticide has been more localized and more problematic. Now coming to the third type of category of agricultural chemical, that is manure or biosolids. Manure or biosolids are generally obtained by the plant or animal waste. The application of biosolids like livestocks, manure, compost, sewage, sludge lead to the accumulation of heavy metals, organic matter that is used as organic fertilizer in the agriculture. The application of these solids leads to the accumulation of heavy metals such as arsenic, cadmium, chromium, mercury, nickel, selenium, zinc, tellurium, antimony, etc. Certain animal waste, such as poultry or cattle waste, animal dung, are commonly applied to crop either as slurry or in the form of solid, although most of them are valuable fertilizer. Green manure or uh, green biosolids are generally obtained by the plant products. They are generally obtained by the degradation of plant product, or we can say that by the composting process. Third category is the sewage sludge, that is biosolids. Sewage sludge are produced by the wastewater treatment. Sewage sludge are mostly produced by the wastewater treatment process. Application of biosolid is common in many countries, but under certain conditions, metal added in soil by the application of biosolid can be leached downwards through the soil profile and can have potential for contamination with the soil. Heavy metal has caused great concern about their application in agricultural practices. A study shows that biosolid treated soil shown increased concentration of cadmium, nickel, and zinc. Now coming to the next type of pollutant, that is wastewater. Wastewater is basically, it is estimated that around 20 million hectare land are irrigated with the wastewater. Wastewater is used water from any combination of domestic, industrial, commercial, or agricultural activities, surface runoff, or stormwater, and any severe inflow or severe infiltration. The application of such type of water is now a common practice in many parts of the world. Farmers are not interested about the environmental problem or environmental hazards. Their priorities are maximum yield of the crops and profit. So they easily use this kind of wastewater. In several Asian cities, agricultural waste on wastewater irrigation occupy approximately 50% of the vegetable supply to the urban area. Although the metal concentration in wastewater effluents are usually relatively low, long-term irrigation of land with such can eventually result in heavy metal accumulation of the soil. Now coming to the next category, that is the metal mining or milling process. Mineral process, also known as ore dressing, associated with the separating commercial valuable minerals from their ores. During the mining process, large amount with the waste along with the heavy metal deposited into the natural environment. Extensive lead and zinc are zinc ore mining and smelting have resulted in contamination of the soil that pose risk to human health and ecological health. Methods for the reclamation for this contaminated site are very lengthy and expensive, and so the method for reclamation for this site are very lengthy and the expensive too. Other material generated by a variety of industries such as textile, tanning, petrochemical, agriculture, pharmaceutical, or pharmaceutical industries are highly variable in composition. So these are the metal mining and milling process that are the major source, that are one of the major source of heavy metal pollution on soil surface. Now coming to the next source, that is airborne source. Airborne source includes stack and duct emission of air, gas, and vapor stream. Metal from airborne source are generally released as particulate contained in the gas stream. Such metals are arsenic, lead, cadmium that are volatile in nature in high temperature processing, convert to oxides and condense as fine particles unless a reducing atmosphere is maintained. Stack emission can be distributed over a wide area by natural air until dry and wet precipitation. Mechanism remove them from the gas stream. The concentration of metal emission depends upon the site-specific conditions. All solid particles in smoke from fires and in other emission from factories, chimneys are eventually deposited on land or sea. Lead emitted from combustion of petrol containing tetraethyl lead contributes subsequently to the content of lead in soil in urban area. Lubricating oil or tire contribute additional amount of zinc and cadmium to the soil. So these are the airborne source of the soil pollution. Now coming to the next, what is the potential risk of heavy metal? Most common heavy metals that are found in the soil surface are lead, chromium, cadmium, arsenic, copper, nickel, zinc. The risk of bioaccumulation and biomagnification of these metals in food chain are very high. So, knowledge of basic chemistry, environmental, and associated health effects of these metals are very necessary. The weight and transport of heavy metal in soil depends significantly on the chemical and the specification of the metal. Once in the soil, heavy metal are absorbed by initial fast reaction that occurs in minutes or hours, and then it is followed by the slow adsorption reaction that completes in the days and years, and are redistributed into different chemical forms with the varying bioavailability, mobility, and toxicity. Bioaccumulation and biomagnification of heavy metals like lead, chromium, arsenic, zinc, capable of decreasing crop production or percentage yield, total yield of crop. It is also associated with the contamination of groundwater. Now coming to the distribution and control of heavy metal. Distribution, it is believed that the distribution and reaction of these type of heavy metal with the other component of environment can be controlled by the reaction of heavy metal in soil. These reactions are mineral precipitation and dissolution, ion exchange, adsorption and desorption process, aqueous complexation, biological immobilization and mobilization, and plant uptake. So these type of reactions between soil and heavy metal contamination are helpful for remediation of contaminated soil. Now coming to the remediation of contaminated soil. For remedial process, it is overall objective of any soil remediation is to create a final solution for protecting of human health and environment. For heavy metal contaminated soil, the physical and chemical form of heavy metal strongly influence the selection of the remedial technique. The contaminated site should be characterized on the basis of the type, amount, and distribution of heavy metal. Once the site has been characterized, the desired level of each metal has been contaminated by, has been characterized by the desired level of each metal has been determined by the comparison with the soil quality standards. The remedial goals for heavy metal may be set up as total metal concentration or as leachable metal in soil or as some combination of these. So this is the main basic goals of remediation of contaminated soil. Basically, remedial treatment approach of contaminated soil is strongly influenced by the physical and chemical form of heavy metal. By using this physical and chemical form of heavy metal, we can apply the various type of remedial techniques according to their requirement or according to the needs of contaminated site. Now coming to the remedial technology. Several techniques exist for the remediation of metal contamination. According to Gupta et al., the remediation techniques are broadly classified into three categories: gentle in situ remediation, in situ harsh soil restrictive measures, and third one is the in situ or ex situ harsh soil destructive measures. The goal of the last two harsh measures, that is in situ harsh soil restrictive measures, and the last one is the in situ or ex situ harsh soil restrictive measures, is to avoid hazardous either to man, plant, or animal. While main goal of gentle in situ remediation is to restore the soil fertility, which allow the safe use of soil. So these are the three categories according to the first classification of remediation technique. Another classification places remediation technologies for heavy metals contaminated on soil under 5 categories. First one is the isolation. The techniques involved in remediation is capping and surface batteries. The second category of remediation technology is the mobility reduction or and the toxicity reduction. The techniques involved in this category is chemical treatment, permeable treatment walls, biological treatment, bioaccumulation, phytoremediation, bioleaching, biochemical process. The third category of remedial technology is immobilization. The techniques under this are solidification, petrification, and chemical treatment. Extraction is the another technique. Soil washing, pyrometallurgical extraction, in situ soil flushing, and electrokinetic treatment are the example of extraction category. And the last one is the physical separation. So these are the 5 categories that involved in the remedial techniques according to the another classification. Basically, in situ technique treat to remove the contaminants from soil without remove of the soil. Ex situ means that the contaminated soil is moved and excavated. So these are the techniques. In practice, it's more convenient to apply a hybrid approach, means combination of two or more than 2 techniques, that is called hybrid approach. So in normal practice, in common practice, we can apply the hybrid approach for most cost efficient technique. So we can choose with these techniques which one is fit for our cost effective technique or which one fit is for best removal technique. Now coming to the key factors that influence the applicability and selection of any available remediation techniques. First of all, that is cost. We can go through for the cheap or easily available technique that is cost effective. The second major key factor is long-term effectiveness. The third one is commercial availability. Means it is available in worldwide in nearby market areas or somewhere else. Next one is the general acceptance. Applicability to high metal concentration. Applicability to mixed waste, that is heavy metal and organics. Toxic reduction, mobility reduction, and volume reduction. These are the key factors that required for the treatment of heavy metal from the soil surface. So out of the 5 techniques, we are going to discuss here the major 3 techniques, and the first one is the immobilization technique. Immobilization technique. In this technique, in situ and ex situ immobilization techniques are carried out. Techniques are practical approach to remediation of metal contaminated soil. The ex situ technique is applied in areas where highly contaminated soil must be removed from its place of origin and storage of connected with the high ecological risk. The advantage of this technique is it is fast and easily applicable, and second is relatively low cost of investment and operation. But there is some disadvantages of also these techniques, that is the high invasivity of the environment, generation of a significant amount of solid waste. It means that twice as larger as volume after the processing. The byproduct must be stored on a spatial landfill site, and permanent control of stored waste is required. So in this technique, there is some disadvantages that we required a permanent uh, control technique for immobilization of solid waste and so on. Now this next category is in situ technique in immobilization techniques. In situ techniques are the fixing agent abatement are applied to the unexcavated soil, and the advantage of these techniques are low invasivity, simplicity, and rapidity. They are relatively inexpensive. A small amount of waste are produced. High public acceptability, cover a broad spectrum of inorganic pollutants. Whereas the common disadvantage of these techniques are it is only a temporary solution. Activation of pollutant may occur when when the soil's physiochemical property is changed. Means the contamination are still in their environment. The declamination process is applied only to the surface layer of soil, that is 30 to 50 centimeters, and the permanent monitoring is necessary. Again, whether the ex situ immobilization techniques or in situ immobilization techniques, the major disadvantage of this process are that we required a permanent monitoring system. So there is the common immobilization technique. After use organic and inorganic amendment to accelerate the attenuation of metal mobility and toxicity in soil. The primary role of immobilizing amendment is to alter the soil metal to more stable phase by absorption, complexation, and precipitation. The most common amendments are clay, cement, zeolite, phosphate, organic compost, and microorganism. Here the table shows the different type of organic amendment that are used in different type of material. Like black sawdust is used for cadmium, lead, mercury, and copper. Sewage sludge that is used for again cadmium. Rice processing, straw, and poultry farms are again used for the heavy cadmium heavy metal immobilization. Similarly, for lead immobilization, there is a black sawdust is present, paper mill dust is present, rice processing is present, straws, and sugarcane waste material is present. So these are the organic amendments that are used for the heavy metal immobilization. Similarly, there is some kind of inorganic amendment that are present or that are liberated by the various anthropogenic activities, and they are very effective for the immobilization of various type of metals like lead, zinc, copper, cadmium, nickel, mercury, etc. For example, phosphate salt that are released from fertilizer plant are used for the immobilization of lead, zinc, copper, and cadmium. Lime that is released from the lime factory is used for the immobilization of cadmium, copper, nickel, lead, and zinc. From thermal power plant, fly ash and slag both are liberated into the soil and atmosphere, and they are very effective for the immobilization of cadmium, lead, copper, zinc, and chromium. And again, cadmium, lead, zinc, and chromium, respectively. From the cement plant, the waste material that is used for the immobilization of chromium, copper, zinc, and lead. Similarly, phosphorite it is used for the immobilization of heavy metal like zinc, lead, copper, and cadmium. Now coming to the next method of treatment, that is soil washing. Soil washing is essential a volume reduction or waste minimization treatment process. During the soil washing, physical separation and chemical extractions both are occurs. For physical separation, soil particles which host the majority of the contamination are separated from the bulk soil fractions. And in chemical extractions, the contaminants are removed from the soil by aqueous chemicals and recovered from solution on a solid substrate, or we can use the combination of both. In all cases, separated contaminants go to the hazardous waste landfill, or it uh, occasionally they further treated by chemical, thermal, or biological process. So basically, with physical soil washing, difference between grain size, settling velocity, specific gravity, and magnetic property are used for the separation. While with the chemical washing of soil that are used with the chemical washing soil are cleaned by the selective transferring the contaminants on the soil into the solution. Heavy metals are sparingly soluble and predominantly in a soft state. Washing the soil with the only water would be expected to remove a low amount for better removal. So for better removal, soil is mixed with the aqueous solution of acid, alkali, or some other solvent. So soil washing is the basically volume reduction or waste minimization treatment process. In this soil washing technique, we use physical and chemical extraction, physical separation, chemical extraction technique, in or the combination of both. The effectiveness of washing in soil washing is closely related to the ability of the extractive solution to dissolve the metal contaminants in soil. However, the strong bonds between the soil and metals make the cleaning process difficult. Extract capable of dissolving large quantity of metal would be suitable for cleaning process. The goal of soil remediation technique is to preserve the natural soil property and remove the excessive heavy metal level. The choice of solvent that can be used in the cleaning process. So this is all about the soil washing techniques. Now coming to the phytoremediation. Phyto means plant, and remediation means the process of correcting a fault or deficiency. Basically, the idea of phytoremediation is very old, that is approx 300 years. But uh, yes, it is a very old idea of approx 300 years old, but the concept is introduced in 1983. Phytoremediation is a type of in situ remediation. It is also known as green remediation, botanoremediation, agro-remediation, and vegetative remediation. Actually, in phytoremediation, plants break down or degrade the organic pollutant or remove and stabilize the metal contaminants. As it is relatively low technology, phytoremediation is still mostly in its testing stage, and as such has not been used in many places as a full-scale application. However, it has been tested successfully in many places around the world for many different contaminants. Phytoremediation is energy efficient, aesthetically used in low to moderate level of contamination. It can be used in combination with other traditional remedial methods also. In phytoremediation technique, there is several advantages and disadvantages of phytoremediation technique. Some of them are, uh, yes, first of all, this is a very economic technique. Uh, Actually, it is more economically viable using of some tools and supplies of agriculture. Second, it is less disruptive to the environment and does not involve waiting for new plant communities to recolonize the site. Third one is the disposal site are not needed. Next one is the it is more likely to accepted by the public because it is more aesthetically pleasing than the traditional methods. Next one is the uh, it avoids the excavation and transport of um, polluted media, thus reducing the risk of spreading the contamination, and it has potential to treat site polluted with more than one type of pollutants. However, some of the disadvantages of phytoremediations are it is depends on the growing conditions required by the plant, that is climate, geology, altitude, and temperature. So it is totally dependent upon the growing conditions. This is the major disadvantage of phytoremediation technique that we face. Second disadvantage is the large second disadvantage of this is the large scale operation required. Uh, Basically, large scale operation required is to access the agricultural equipment and knowledge. Third one is the success is dependent on the tolerance of the plant of the pollutant. Next one is the contaminants collected in the sensing tissues may be released back into the environment in in autumn season or any other season. Contaminants uh, contaminants may be collected in wood tissues that is used as fuel. Time taken to remediate site for exceeds that the other technologies. It is very time taking process because it requires the full grown up plant and then the remediation process occurs. So the time taken to remediation site far exceeds that the other technologies. Contaminant solubility may be increased, leading to the greater environmental damage and the possibility of leaching also. So the potentially useful phytoremediation technology for remediation of heavy metal contaminated soil include phytoextraction, phytostabilization, and phytofiltration. The choice of plant for phytoremediation process is depends upon various key factors. First of all, it depends upon the tolerance of heavy metal, in plant. Okay, the plant is uh, if the plant is tolerate for that particular effect of that particular heavy metal, then it is useful for phytoremediation. So it is very important for the selection process. The second is grow rapidly with the high biomass yield per hectare, high metal accumulating ability in the soiler parts, and profuse have a profuse root system and a high bioaccumulation factor. These are the major key factors that is used by any researcher or any scientist when it is start with the phytoremediation process. So these are the common factors. Phytoextraction is no doubt a publicly appealing remediation technology. Two approaches have been proposed for phytoextraction of heavy metal, namely continuous or natural phytoextraction and chemically enhanced phytoextraction method. Now coming to the phytoremediation of plants. A number of processes are involved during the phytoextraction. The major process, actually there is a chain reaction occurs during this phytoremediation process. So the number of processes that are involved during the phytoextraction, the first one is the metal fraction is absorbed at root surface. First of all, the metal is absorbed by the root surface, that is the absorption at the root surface. Second one is the bioavailable metal moves across the cellular membrane into the root cell. Third one is the third process or third step of the phytoremediation is a fraction of the metal absorbed into roots is immobilized in the vacuoles. The next stage of phytoremediation is intercellular mobile metal across cellular membrane into the root vascular system, that is xylem. And the final stage of phytoremediation is metal is translocated from the root to aerial tissues, that is stems or leaves. Once inside the plant, most metals are too insoluble to move freely into the vascular system. So they usually form carbonate, sulfate, or phosphate precipitate, immobilizing them in apoplastic, that is extracellular, or symplastic, that is intracellular compartments. Hyperaccumulator have several beneficial characteristics but may tend to be slow growing and produces low biomass. And years or decades are needed to clean up the contaminated site. To overcome these shortfalls, chemically enhanced phytoextractions has been developed. So these are the common examples that plant used in the phytoremediation techniques. First of all, for the removal of cadmium and zinc through the phytoremediation, Halepsy-Circulensis is used. Brisica junska is used for lead and zinc. Citus nittifera is used for chromium, nickel, and zinc. Similarly, Betula is used for the phytoremediation of zinc present in the soil. These are the common example of hyperaccumulator. Hyperaccumulator again that are characterized beneficial characteristics. They have several beneficial characteristics, but the problem with them needed to clean up the contaminated site. So these are the common example of homoaccumulators, hypoaccumulators. Now coming to the conclusion of this slide, this session. So according to the study, we conclude that heavy metal contamination of soil may pose risks and hazards to humans and ecosystem. Through direct ingestion or contact with the contaminated soil, the food chain, drinking of contaminated groundwater, reduction in food quality. This also leads the reduction of land usability for agricultural production, causing food insecurity and land tenure problems. Remediation of contaminated soil by heavy metal is necessary in order to reduce the associated risk, make the land resources fit for the agricultural practices, enhance crop production. Immobilization, soil washing, and phytoremediations are frequently listed among the best available technologies for cleaning up heavy metal contaminated soils. These technologies are recommended for field applicability and commercialization. So these are the conclusions of my presentations, and thank you very much for your patience listening. And now it's over to you, sir, Rajiv Ranjan, sir. Over to you, Rajiv, sir. Hello.
Yes, ma'am, and a very nice presentation. And a few questions asked by the participant. Please see on chat box.
Sir, I'll see their questions and I'll answer. If there is a possibility to give live answer, then it's okay. Otherwise, I'll give them an answer in the chat box.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. I'm discussing the question from in Zoom chat box.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you very much for your nice presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
I have one question from your this lecture session.
Yes, sir.
How phytoremediation is energy efficient?
Sir, energy efficient means uh, a process that requires a low energy input and gives a better output. That is called the energy efficient process. For phytoremediation technique, we have to grow a suitable plant for that for particular contaminated area. So it's very energy efficient process because it required very less input. We required only a twig of plant or seeds of plant and just grow there to the plants. And they it is not required any sort of fertilizer or pesticide for growing or completion of their life. So it is very energy efficient because it has low input but better output technique. In that way, it is energy efficient, sir.
And okay, ma'am. And you can see the chat box. I think 2-3 participant has asked some question. Please see that.
Yes, sir.
One is that he is asking, is there any relationship, correlation between heavy metals in soils and legacy contamination? If yes, how can this be established?
Yes, sir. There is a correlation between the heavy metal in soil and legacy contamination. Actually, uh, most of the contaminants come into the soil are from different sources like industrial sources or uh, nearby runoff or agricultural areas. So there is a positive, always a positive correlation between these two. If we see that uh, roadside dust or any other area, urban area, or we can see the smelting area, soil from the smelting area, we found that the excessive presence of zinc or cadmium is there. So there is always positive relation between the heavy metal contamination in soil. So,
One question from Rudresh Jesse.
yes, sir.
Uh, Please tell me some of human disease come from heavy metal.
Uh, Sir, some common disease that are caused by the heavy metal, for example, we can say cadmium. Cadmium is very well known to causing ethie disease. That is a disease associated with the bones, and arsenic is another type of poisonous or toxic element that cause uh, blackfoot disease or very poisonous to tissues, human tissues. And similarly, mercury is very well known for the Minamata disease, first observed in Japan. So these all are, and a part of this, all heavy metal cause headache or severe type of vomiting sensation, or they damage liver or kidney because they are deposited over there. So they, sometimes they deposited livers or kidney, and that is also known as for the mental retardation in childs or mental sickness. So these type of heavy metals are very problematic for human health, or we can say living organism. So Minamata disease, ethie disease are very common
Yeah,
from
yeah,
mercury.
very common
Yes.
disease in
Yes, ma'am. In here, Jadugoda, uranium remediation, due to uranium radiation, also some this type human disease are can see here in India.
Sir, actually, because of excessive contamination of fluoride, it is commonly occurs in uh, the place that you told, Charuguda, right?
Mm.
And in Chhattisgarh, Ambagarh Chowki is there. So excessive contamination of fluoride is called severe type of problem, or excessive presence of uranium is also is reported as in this. This.
So, yes, ma'am. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. Uh,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your nice presentation.
Thank you, sir.
And now this is the time for our next speaker. She is Dr. Riham Jalan. She is from Syria, and she is a PhD from University of Damascus, and presently she is working as a scientist, as an engineer in the General Commission of Scientific and Agricultural Research in Syria. And she is a very good in hand chemist. I have seen her pictures working in the fields, and she is very good working person in the laboratory also. And we are fortunate that in this webinar, she is with us as an speaker. Ma'am, I welcome you, and you can present your lecture. Okay. Uh, so,
Okay, good morning for everyone with us today. Before delivering my speech or my presentation, I want first of all to thank University Department of Chemistry and Dr. Shaima Prasad Mukherjee University for giving me this chance, and especially Honorable Big Counselor, Professor Mundasar, and of course our convener, Dr. Rajiv Ranjan, and each and everyone from the organization for giving me this chance to be today in this international webinar. and to give me the chance to discuss with you one of the most important issues in the global level, which is soil pollution. So I will start to share my screen now.
Yeah, ma'am, your screen is visible. Just it is not full screen. So
Yeah,
please
visible.
make it. Yeah, it is visible. Start this
Am I able?
page. No, ma'am. Actually, you are not coming in the. In my
Everything is
yes.
okay. Am I audible?
Yeah. Yeah. It's okay, ma'am. And presentation is coming on the screen.
Okay, the voice is
Yes. Yes. Nivedan,
yes.
sir.
Okay,
Every.
good thing for all. Yes, yes. My presentation title, The Interrelationship Between Soil Chemistry and Human Health, the effect of spirituality on some medical tests, on some medical problems. I'm Dr. Riham Halam. I'm working for the General Commission for Scientific Agricultural Research in Syria, the Administration of Natural Research, and for now I'm working for the Planet Water Analyzing Lab. I have a PhD in rural engineering, soil physics in particular. In this presentation, we are going to discuss the main ideas, 5 points. First, we are going to speak about general ideas about heavy metals and soil pollution. Then the sources of heavy metals, the available sources of these pollutants, and the heavy metals behavior within the soil planet system. Then we are discussing the heavy metal behavior within the human body and the natural solution to this for soil contamination. First of all, I want to share with you some general information about what heavy metals are. Actually, if you surf the net, and I encourage everybody to surf the net and enjoy the huge library of references that we are lucky to have. A lot of researches related to each detail about heavy metals. Some of them were conducted by agricultural researchers, other were conducted by medical teams or tests. So we can find in this references a lot of definitions about heavy metals. For example, Duffs in 2002 said that heavy metals term usually used to name a group of metals or semi-metals related to pollution and environmental poisoning risks. Also, another definition where in 2014, heavy metals are naturally occurring elements that have high atomic weight and a density at least 5 times greater than that of water, with potential effects on human health and in the environment. The third definition I collect for you today was from Abdulatif and others, 2014. Heavy metals are a group of important pollutants with density at least 5 times greater than water, and able to combust easily and have harmful effects on the system. The main point I want to refer here, all these definitions are correct and true. It's about, it differs because of the angle I'm looking from or how I deal with those elements. But I want to share, to say that they all agree about one thing, one common thing. They have some points in common, and they all agree about its harmful effects on human and environmental. So heavy metals are usually known not because of their chemical properties, but because of their adverse effects on both human health and organisms and the ecosystem. I divide them here in 2 main groups. The first group on the left, I will name only some examples of the heavy metals: nickel, chrome, zinc, copper, iron, and manganese. Actually, in this first group, there are essential nutrients for planets and for humans. For example, as an agricultural research, we divided the nutrients within the soil into main parts or two main groups. Macro nutrients, which include usually nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. The plants need them in relatively big amounts. And the other are the micro nutrients, which include zinc, copper, iron, and manganese. They are essential for plant growth only in small doses, but in higher doses, they will cause an toxic effect. In the human case, it is the same. Those elements are nutrients, and they are actually required for various biological and biochemical processes and functions within the human body, and may initially symptoms if they are not exist in adequate amounts. But in excessive or large doses, we will start to see acute and serious toxicities for humans. The other which include cadmium and lead, actually they are not essential nutrients, they are only pollutants and toxic elements for both planet, animal, and human body. Actually, the topic, each topic related to heavy metals started to attract and increase attention during the recent years. That's why we see that 2 of the most serious and important issues in the globe, on a global level, were related to heavy metal pollution. And the World Organization put some of those heavy metals like arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury among the most poisoning chemical elements. Why? Because they have the ability to cause acute damage on the cellular level for the cellular components of the human body. Actually, for several years, the air pollution and pollution are well known for humans. We also hear about those who break news, social media, and other websites. But in the case of soil pollution, unfortunately, not people know a lot of details about soil pollution. Although it's very dangerous because a polluted soil will reduce a polluted food, and a polluted food will cause a health problems. Usually, the medical teams of doctors, professors, and researchers in the medical field try hardly to find the cures and solutions for several human diseases and illnesses. As an agriculture and environmental research, we are trying to help them by eliminating the reasons and the resource of diseases before it causes that acute and dangerous to human lives. We can all see, I guess, these pictures is from India, unfortunately. It's about air pollution. It's very visible that the air is low. I think most of us have seen those pictures before. Also here, we can see the direct effect of pollution on human health because those heavy metals can enter our human bodies by a direct way like inhalation, or indirect way because these pollutants are held in the air, and then the brain will bring them back to the soil, and then enter our food chain and enter our bodies finally. So during COVID-19, actually, there was a positive effect on air quality. If we can see the diagram on the right side, we can see the improvement of air quality during only 3 months, the first 3 months of the lockdown. If you can see the blue line, it's related to, it was from Delhi, India. Actually, we compare to air quality by measurements of CO2 and NO2. We can see how giving the earth some risks, giving the earth a break from vehicles, transportation, cars and buses, can improve the air quality only within 2 to 3 months. The same positive case were observed in China. we see how the air quality was improved, while unfortunately the opposite thing was observed in France, because people during the pandemic of COVID-19 started to use a lot of masks and gloves. But instead of having a suitable way to get rid of these waste, which is very dangerous, people started to throw them in the streets, and then remove them to the shores and coasts, and then they reach the sea. I think most of us have seen these pictures and maps in the breaking news. So my point here that it is very clear here about air pollution and water pollution. All of us at least know some details about these two kinds of pollution. But why we don't know a lot about soil pollution? What makes that kind of pollution so dangerous? What factors make soil pollution more dangerous? Actually, there are several factors that make this and help to make this kind of pollution are more dangerous and serious, because simply we can't identify, recognize the soil quality by our naked eye. There are no differences. We can also, if we grab some amount of soil, even if it was polluted, it will be very normal for us. Its odor also will be very natural. We can decide from its color or its odor if it was polluted or not. Unfortunately, we can't taste it. But if we try to do that, we will not recognize any differences. So can find if it has any concentration. Also, its touch will be very natural. So in general, we can find or recognize soil pollution by our senses. We need some experts, some instruments like the atomic absorption method, which is highly recommended in this case to recognize the total and available concentration of these pollutants within the soil. Unfortunately, as we said, that most of us didn't find out soil pollution and didn't hear in some time, unfortunately. Actually, those heavy metals not extraterrestrial elements. They are naturally exist in the Earth's crust and usually distributed to the environment through natural and non-natural activities. The natural activities actually include, we will mention some examples like volcanic eruptions. The stronger the volcano is, the farther those elements will travel. So we will find some heavy metals in the ashes of the volcanic eruptions, also the ashes from the wildfires here in White. It can travel for hundreds of kilometers with the wind. Also, we can find some concentration of these toxic elements in seaborne water. As we all know, seaborne water usually kept within the parental rock or the rocks beneath the sub or the soil. So, and then can find some ways to go upward on the surface, but we can find some concentration of these heavy metals in some seaborne waters. As we all know, each soil has derived from a parent material, so it differs from a region to another. But usually, most common heavy metals related to the parent material are nickel and arsenic, which highly from a place to another, even the same type of soil. The other responsible, and in my point of view, the main responsible of separating those heavy metals within the environment and ecosystem, unfortunately, is the human activities. Humans are the main responsible of polluting this planet, unfortunately, through several activities. like mining, fossil fuels, combustion, metal smelting, and using the excessive use of pesticides and fertilizers. Of course, the industrial activities, the urban waste, and then they try to get rid of this waste. So they are trying to incinerate them. Incineration of urban wastes are the main source of dangerous elements like cadmium, for example. You will be amazed to see how many resources of these toxic elements within your house is fresh. So I will name only some of them, just to be known. For example, breeze, paints and pigments, the smashed glass, the paperboards. Paperboards are one of the main sources of chrome, for example. And the nylon bags and bottles, of course, the empty bags with their luge of the remaining materials of those agrochemicals. Also, we have cosmetics, tires, pigments, cigarettes. Cigarettes, usually those parts remaining from using cigarettes, which in large amounts all around the world. Most of them are usually thrown to the ground and then reach our soils. Have two main poisoning toxic elements, which are cadmium and lead. One of the most dangerous wastes also the electronic and the industrial wastes. Actually, even in agriculture, human activities are one of the main responsible heavy metals within the environment. In agriculture, for example, there are trends during the recent years because of less fresh water available for irrigation water. The competition of the highly populated and increased population each year to agriculture on the uses of fresh water. So farmers started to use the gray water. For whom didn't know what gray water is, after collecting the wastewater from the drainage system, usually it should go through several activities and stages of treatments, like biological and chemical treatments. The final water we get, it's the gray water, usually used for irrigation. And the solid part, it's sewage sludge. The farmers started to use it as an organic fertilizer. But actually, those activities are responsible for spreading some toxics like cadmium, mercury, lead, zinc, and chrome. So that's why we started to see that each country, and I'm also about advanced countries, started to make some rules and control the use of these materials in agriculture. Also, the excessive use of agrochemicals like pesticides, fungicides, and fertilizers have direct and indirect effect on human health and environment as well. The direct effect, as we see in the picture in the left, we can see a farmer started to use the pesticides or maybe fungicides without wearing even a mask. So he will inhale that vapor, inhale that smoke burst with air, and then they will accumulate in his blood and tissues. And with time, when it's reached to several limits, it will cause health damages for the body. The indirect way is by these elements will enter plant tissues, enter our food chain, and then we will, if we consume this kind of food, we will help those elements to enter our bodies. Actually, agrochemicals like pesticides and fungicides, which contain some dangerous elements like cadmium, lead, and mercury, were prohibited since 2002. But there are other fungicides which contain, in particular, copper and zinc, are still used until today. For example, I put two formulas here to show the content of manganese and zinc in mancozeb. It's a substance called Inclusive. It's usually used to protect the elements from fungi, and still used until today. The other formula is for Bordeaux powder, which also used to protect the planets from the eggs of insects and to fight some fungi. It has a high content of copper. Here I'm gonna give one example about how many routes and ways heavy metals, how many routes they have to enter our body and they causes several illnesses and diseases. Actually, in the forest, the heavy metals are presented as ores in the earth, which are then recovered during the mining activities. So we get minerals. During these activities, we will get exposure to these metals. Heavy metals exist as sulfates or like oxides, or it can exist like both of them in both formulas. So during mining, there is a direct impact by getting in touch with these ores. For example, heat can enter the body tissues through the skin, and this is a direct effect. Also, through mining concentration, these elements may enter the soil. So I have also a direct effect by a direct touch to polluted soil, or indirect by two ways. The first is these heavy metals have the possibility to enter the food chain by planets, and then I will get polluted. Or it can find its ways to through the hydrological ways and water, and then I will have a polluted groundwater, which is the worst case. Also, through mining, the dust in the air can travel with wind for longer distances. I have a direct effect here by inhalation. And we all know the problems usually workers in mining they might get. Also, an indirect effect by coming back to soil with rain, especially the acidic rain. Also, after mining, I may get a possibility of pollution for water for the near water bodies, or by holding these heavy metals with air and then reach it to the water bodies. Also, I have a direct effect. So I may have a polluted drinking water if it reaches the fresh water or groundwater, as we mentioned before, or indirect. If we use this water for irrigation, I will get a polluted planets and a polluted food. Or if it was in the sea, I will get polluted sea animals, which is a part of our food. So we have seen how many routes and ways these heavy metals have the chance to enter the human bodies. To describe why, I want to share with you some picture here. A soil particle, as we all know, the soil differ in size, differentiation with soil type, from clay to silt and sand. When pollutants or toxins soil profile, within the on the soil particle, there are a functional sites. So they will absorb it to the functional site on the source of these particles. And here I want to mention one important thing. The finer the particles are, the finer the finest three types of soil particles is clay. So the most or the higher clay percentage I have in my soil, the most dangerous and most difficult remediation process I will get. So those elements will absorb the soil particle surface on the final sites. When all of them are saturated, here is the risk. So some of them will enter the soil solution and available form Available for what? Available for planet uptake, so they need get to our food. Available for for moving within the soil profile. So I will the higher risk I will get from leaching and reaching the ground, our drinking water, and may with erosion to pollute the water bodies as fresh water or salt water. Actually, the closer the groundwater is to the surface, the higher the risk. If I have those available concentration of heavy metals within the soil, what's going to happen after that? Those available heavy metals are absorbed by the root system. Those absorbed by the root head. Some of them bend to roots. Yeah, are they appropriate? Okay, I'll continue. So a portion of the elements within the root system will be bent to root cells. So this portion will come back to the soil after removing, example, in case of lots of vegetables, the root systems remain in the soil after collecting or harvesting the lots. So the portion come back to the soil. The other portion will translocate to the stem. Within the stem, also the some for part of this concentration will be to stem tissues and will cause some change or differentiation in the cells and morphological characteristics of stem. And the other part will translocate to the other foliar parts like leaves. Within the some of them, as we said, will go to the roots, and the other will stay bound to the tissues of the leaf. This part may go back to the soil with the falling leaves. So a huge percent of this concentration will get back to our soils. The other portion we can actually, unfortunately, we will consume it with the fruits and vegetables we collect from these polluted soils. In general, on root system levels, the mechanisms heavy metals use to enter the root system, they can move from soil solution to roots by specific carriers, which bear with gluten existed in the plasma membrane of the root cells, or it can use the direct absorption where the soluble substances can move through the membrane by forming electrochemicals. What the results I might get because of the existence of these pollutants within the soil, first I will start to see after a while changes in the root density. I will have less density of the root hairs and the structure, a change in the structure, which means shorter roots with thicker root apex. So the efficiency of absorbing the nutrients will be less because of changes in the cell division and in the arrangement of the tissue. The remaining part also, as we said, come back to soil with accumulated again a higher risk. The non-essential heavy metals, these heavy metals are non-essential for plants. So it can compete with essential metals by the same transmembrane stress filters. Therefore, less nutrients will be absorbed, and that will affect the plant growth and the yield that I get from these plants as quality and quantity. The fair parts, the mechanism they follow after entering the foliar part. After the absorption, the metal ions can be stored or translocated, or some will store and the other will translocate it. It's different. It's different from a plant species to another. So it might be translocated to the shoot via the xylem. The metals will move mainly via the xylem, and their relation with just cells. And that may induce, as we said before, the alteration in the differentiation of the vascular system in the blood. The transport of these metal ions in the exam is usually a strictly controlled process and mediated by a membrane transport routine. Due to the reactivity of metal ions with functional group like carboxyl and hydroxyl, the carboxylic acid and amino acids represent potential ligands of these heavy metals. For example, here, some carboxyl acids like citric and malic acids are involved in various processes related to this movement, including transportation, of course, through the air and vascular respiration. I will give example. For example, the presence of histidine, which involved the transportation, the transport of needle within the foliar bud. Its presence in high amounts will increase the amounts of needle transported through the foliar bud with 50 times than the usual amount. Of course, this process is controlled by the pH of the exam and the transfiguration process, which is usually responsible for the movement of the most of the nutrients with the water from the foliar system. What the effects I might get because of the existence of these pollutants in the foliar buds of the planet. Actually, the response of planets to heavy metals toxicity includes the structural, the biochemical, and the physiological changes, which depend on the type of the concentration, the time of planet that exposure to these elements, of course, but in general, the most familiar and visible changes that I might notice is related to phytotoxicity in the planet, reduction in growth, especially the root system, as we mentioned before, the chlorosis and the necrosis in the leaf. And subsequently, I will get symptoms very similar to leaf symptoms. In addition to the sedative stress on sea level. Here in this table, I put the available concentration of the most abundant heavy metals in soil and in the planet. My point here is we can see the wide range, for example, in nickel from 5 to 500 ppm in soil, while the ideal concentration is only 40. But in case of planets, the maximum available concentration of nickel is only 4 ppm, and the ideal number is much less than that. So I shouldn't wait till I get the maximum concentration of these metals to get or to reach that level. I should keep them as much as I can closer to the ideal. Here I want to mention another important point. If we compare when nickel and cadmium, for cadmium the maximum level is only 2 ppm in the soil and only 1.2 in the planet because it's a more dangerous element. So it's different also according to what kind of things I'm dealing with. During my researches, actually, and my results was with other research and other published paper. I planted some foliar planets, which we collect foliar buds and as food, and some tuber planets, which was potato. Actually, the results show that the planets to accumulate higher percentages of these minerals with foliar, the leaves in particular, and then move only or translocate only a smaller portion of that concentration to the storage organs, like tubers or roots, like carrots and radish. So if you want to plant some and you have any doubts about its quality, its health, So I recommend to grow some tuber or root plants, not leafy plants. So it will be safer to consume. On the other hand, we found that the crust of this or the crust of potato try to work as filter and prevent those toxic elements from reaching the inner tissues of the potato tuber. So I highly recommend to remove the crust, although it may have has some essential nutrients with smaller amounts. We can find alternative resources of them. So I highly recommend to remove it before cooking. Also, another positive ideas which will make it adverse effect or avoid effects on human bodies, unfortunately, because of the this or the poor knowledge about soil pollution. Many countries, and it's because it's very familiar and popular in many countries, the herbal medicine. Herbal medicine is usually in most cases, the full parts of planets or the seeds, the flowers, what parts didn't change the main idea. These herbals either were consumed as fresh plants or consumed as manufactured products. If they are polluted or derived from polluted air, those heavy metals those materials, instead of being medicines, they will turn into resources of several metals enter our body with their tissues, by consuming a spray, their products, whatever the situation was. Actually, researchers during years have mentioned and estimated the soil pollution by mentioning a reduction of yield. For example, there was a research in 2009, 11 years but from now, estimated about 20 million hectares of polluted soil in China, which means 1/5 of China's total planted area was polluted with heavy metals. They estimated that, or mentioning that, by mentioning the reduction of productivity, which was 10 million tons. I'm not concerned about the reduction of yield. I'm more concerned about the quality of that food. Why? Because, as we said before, we can decide it in our senses, so we have unseen results. It may need a long time to feel very painless for exact levels within the human bodies, and most of their illnesses and diseases have common things with other diseases. So usually they refer to soil pollution with the reduction of heat, but we should try to refer to soil pollution by food quality, not quantity. We can see the concentration, the change in concentration with time. At this time, these heavy metals will accumulate within the human body, so they will cause some mild health problems, which could be cured, or mild symptoms like any other diseases. But after reaching a maximum level, we will start to see chronic diseases, acute and serious risks, and maybe death. How does that happen? Because they have strong bonds and relationships with our proteins and nucleic acids. They can generate the reactive oxygen species and forming a carcinogenic agent. How does that happen? That's what we are going to discuss. Actually, the direct effects of pollution, we can see here some cases in the polluted soil and water. If we touch with polluted soil or water, we will start to see the rash, acute rash on the skin. So you will start some cases of hair loss in the case of polluted water, and acute inflammatory problems for our eyes with the case of polluted air and water. For example, Salem and others during 2002 reported the existence of certain diseases like kidney failure, hair loss, anemia, and liver disorders with the existence of heavy metals including lead, cadmium, copper, molybdenum, nickel, and chrome in the water of some big Asian cities. Very dangerous. For example, here, what ways those heavy metals will fit in our bodies? Actually, if we take the lead as an example, as we said before, lead has the ability to enter our bodies through the skin or by the oral way. Then it will be carried by red cells because most of these heavy metals, after entering our bodies, will be held on blood cells or the tissues. After that, some of it will translate to liver, kidneys. After that, we will start, after accumulation, we'll start some concentration of it in our teeth, bone, and hair. And finally, after certain levels, we may face. What mechanisms heavy metals used? Actually, there are 4 mechanisms for heavy metal toxicity. The first, by inducing oxidative and oxidation biologies. Heavy metals, as we said, are well known to generate free radicals. These generated free radicals will lead to oxidative stress on the cell level in the body cells. And then it will start to cause cellular damage. It is also known for several studies that the mechanism of free radical generation is very specific to the type of the element itself. So I put 2 examples here to see the difference between them. First of all, we have iron. The free state of iron is generally known to generate hydroxyl radical. This type of free radical is most common known free radical which generated from the oxidation of iron, and it has the capability, it's capable of reacting with biological molecules like protein, lipids, and DNA. Then it will start to damage them and then spread to other parts of the body. In the case of copper ions have been identified to participate in the form of reactive oxygen species. Absent certain chemical actions in the presence of these substances like ascorbic acid within the body, the copper ions will change its chemical formula. And in this shape, it is capable of being involved in the formation of hydroxyl radical. According to medical studies, this free radical in this situation has the ability to induce DNA strand breaks and oxidation of bases via oxygen free radical. The second mechanism is inducing carcinogenesis. The carcinogenesis, the materials or agents or factors responsible for cancer. So some of heavy metals like arsenic, lead, nickel, cadmium, and iron are well known having similar effects. How is that possible? How does that happen? In fact, several signaling proteins or cellular regulatory proteins that participate in several important functions or processes like apoptosis. This term is indicate to the natural process of the programmed death, which is a natural process responsible for dying of old cells and generating the new ones. And by the way, there are about 100 million cells each second. So it's a very natural, very important function happening in human. Also, it can affect cell circulation, the DNA repair, and the cell growth and differentiation. All of them, all these functions are targets of heavy metals. So these pollutants can induce carcinogenic effects by targeting a number, one or more of these pollutants, one or more of these functions. the other hand, there are certain heavy metals which are related to the activation of redox sensitive transcription factors. These factors usually control the expression of protective genes that induce apoptosis, like we said, the proliferation of damaged cells and then repair damaged DNA and power the immune system. It's also specific to the type of heavy metals we are dealing with. For example, in the case of lead, the postulated mechanism lead in inducing carcinogenic process is by inducing DNA damage, disturb DNA repair system, and cellular tumor regularity genes through the generation of reactive oxygen species, and it will affect the chromosomal structure, the sequence of transcription process in general. In the case of cadmium, cadmium has been implicated in promoting the oxidative stress and the DNA damage, which is very serious and very dangerous for human body. The third reason is by inducing the neurotoxicity. Some heavy metals are well known for causing neurotoxicity, like lead and manganese, and they may affect the brain and then cause the neurological toxicity. For example, lead toxicity is usually affect human memory and learning of the brain. We heard a lot about some cases related to lead poisoning, losing of memory, and sometimes symptoms so similar to Alzheimer's. In the case of manganese, it's very known to accumulate in the mitochondria. The mitochondria of the neurons is the energy source, and as well as on the other cell components, and affecting the respiration chain. Also, the trials on animals show the existence of serious effects on the major gas system, which has after the exposure to high levels of manganese and causes a neurotoxicity. The final mechanism here, the biochemical mechanism of heavy metals, is related to the oral intake of heavy metals, like consuming a polluted food or water. After consuming them enter our stomach, the stomach is acid. This acidic medium, these heavy metals will acidify by the acid medium, and in this acid medium, they will be oxidized to their various oxidative states. In this states, they can readily bend to biological molecules such as proteins, enzymes, and then form strong bonds and stable bonds to them. To conclude, heavy metals have several routes and ways to cause harmful effects and disease in human beings. For example, damaging the DNA repair mechanism, and finally, we will get carcinogenesis factors by the neurotoxicity, by inhibition of the neurotransmitters, and they're causing a neuro damage, or by generating the free radicals. These free radicals will attack our proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids, so either causing us a DNA damage or cell membrane or inactivation of enzymes or proteins. And finally, you will get serious illnesses and diseases because lose cellular functions, always the damages of our body cells. I mentioned here some diseases usually result from some heavy metals like lead, cadmium, and chrome. And I have several points to mention after that. For example, for lead, I will start with abdominal pain, fatigue, sleeplessness, algeric, and then autism, kidney damage, and brain damage, and coma, and it's in the case of cadmium, maybe I will start with lung damage, respiratory irritation, vomiting, bone damage, kidney dysfunction, and then some prostate cancer and certain death. According to Chrome, There's the algal reactions, which include severe rednesses, swelling, nose alyssa, cardiovascular effect, and also UCNA damage and stomach tumors, and of course, I have several points here to mention. First of all, of these diseases and illnesses are very similar to other diseases. The symptoms are similar to other illnesses. So maybe most of us have heard about a lot have died because of cancer. What the main source, the main reason for a person with cancer, maybe it will maybe getting exposure to toxic levels of these heavy metals. In the case of cadmium, actually cadmium very dangerous because the body cannot get rid of this concentration of cadmium, because when the cadmium elements reach the kidney will deal with it as a nutrient, and then it will reabsorb it and bring it back to the blood vessels. So tobacco are the main responsible for high concentration of cadmium, and smokers are highly maybe the higher percentages of some kind of cancer were among the smokers because of the high concentration in cadmium in their bodies. In the case of chromium, the toxicity will depend on the type of poison. Usually, the equivalent form is the most dangerous among its three forms, but also it's very dangerous, maybe less than cadmium and lead, but it's still very dangerous to the body. So, what kind of solutions do I have? Actually, as development countries, we are not having a lot of solutions because of the high cost and the list of the pool of the experts and the facilities, the instruments available for us, especially if the polluted area are very vast. So, as we mentioned before, after all the functional sites are saturated, these heavy metals will start to enter the soil solution as a response. So the solution number one in my idea, and actually I tried it in my researches, is by adding extra functional sites, by adding organic matter. Organic matter is well known for having a lot of functional sites on their surfaces. But here I need to mention more than one point. Before adding organic matter, I need to analyze it and to be sure what kind and type, what quality of organic matter I'm adding, the quantity and also the quality. I need to add a large amount if I want to cure some soils, especially if it was clay soils. I need to add some good kinds of quality of organic matter. Actually, also by adding organic matter, I'm helping farmers to reduce the amounts of synthetic fertilizer usually used to increase the yields. They will get the same results, but in most friendly environmental solution and curing the soil at the same time. The second solution is by planting specific kinds of plants like mint. Mint, for example, are well known for its high absorption for some specific elements like lead, zinc, and cadmium. For example, also we have the sunflower. After planting elements, I collect them. I can then incinerate them or burn them. So I'm reducing the total polluted area and removing those toxic elements from the soil, the agricultural. I can planets, uneatable planets. The planets I will use their wood. It will also save the planet the edible birds. Here are some examples of possible planets like hydrangeas, which is responsible for growing aluminium out of the soil. The willow trees can absorb cadmium, zinc, and copper higher than any other species. Also, the water hyssop, which can remove the lead mercury, cadmium, and chrome from wet soils. It's very important. For India, we can use Indian mustard and the Indian grass. It's very familiar, maybe too, and it's effective in soil remediation. The solution three, these solutions, of course, are low in cost, available, and harmful for the environment. In solution number three, we can glean because heavy metal absorption or uptake by plants, it's very affected by the pH of the soil. So added lignin, especially in soils, will affecting the soil pH. Will also reduce the availability of those heavy metals to be absorbed. So less amount of them will be absorbed. I will reduce the risk of the move of these elements or sequence to the chain. In this way, I can reduce their risks. And at the same time, I'm adding some useful elements or nutrients like calcium and magnesium to my the final idea I want to mention here that I'm actually only concerned about the concentration of these elements within the soil. For example, these numbers were from my researches. We can see that in compare with the control, I got a percentage of 166 for chrome, while it was 79 for cadmium. But if I compare the accumulation rate, from season 1, I did 4 seasons in my trail. We can see that the accumulation ability is 24 in cadmium, while it was only 11% for chrome. I'm so interested not only in the concentration of these heavy metals within the soil, I should be also concerned with the rate or speed of accumulation. The same thing was with zinc and copper. Copper has the higher ability to accumulate within the soil. So thanks for listening. I want to share one more thing with you before the presentation. Actually dangerous and very serious condition because these metals will take more than 100 years or decades at least to get removed from our soils. When a soil is polluted, it's very difficult to remediate it. And also, it's a valuable source to get our food chain and then cause chronic and diseases for human beings. We can eliminate these resources even before being exposure to. Also, these heavy metals have the ability to last for long times, as we said, and accumulate. So with accumulation, its risks will be higher. And also, it can change its chemical forms and availability, as we said. So we need to be so careful when dealing with the soil. We need to what kind of materials are entering our soils from chemicals or metal or others, and to monitor our soil health. We need to monitor our soil health because it's the basics of our food and the first step on our health in general. So thank you for all. I wish you enjoyed my presentation and some beneficial information from it.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you for your nice presentation. It was very informative for our participants. And now the question session is open, and I am just watching some questions. I request you to visit in the chat box, and you may take a few questions to answer. And I think the participant will greatly benefited by your answer, I think. So please visit to the chat
I
box.
wish so.
I'm taking one question by Joachim Emeka Ariki. especially black tea has been established to contain high amount of antioxidants. How helpful can tea be in case of heavy metals toxicity? This is the question. Actually, he is
The tea, black tea has been established to find more powerful anti-gluten cases. Actually, each planet with a higher percentage of antioxidants will be benefit for our health. But even those beneficial planets, as we said, like herbal medicines, if they were planted in polluted soil, I'm not gonna anything. I'm not anything consuming them. It's very helpful because it will reduce the oxidate stress in the cell level. But I need to be sure from the quality of these plants before consuming them. Although they are well known for being beneficial for human health, but I need also to manage the of their plants before consuming.
yeah, okay. Thank you, ma'am. And you may pick if there are any question in the chat box. I think this is, I'm not getting any more questions from here.
Actually, I'm reading a question here about tea. They like tea very much. A recent study stated that having tea can lead to cancer. What could be the reason? Actually, there are several reasons here, and there are new studies each day. Some studies were talking about tea as a very good material for health, and then we will discover another studies after a while with an adverse results. But in general, I read some references about these materials. They showed that only 1 cup of tea will be beneficial. Every extra or extensive amount will have an adverse effect on the human body. And as I said before, if not controlling the quality of the planeted, especially the planeted I'm consuming, it will be very harmful and may cause cancer for human body.
Okay, okay, ma'am. Thank you. And if there are some more questions.
Yes, I'm reading here a question about burning and burying. Burning and burying were mentioned. Would burning not pollute the atmosphere and burying contaminate planets, which may be consumed by animals? Actually, both of them are not good solution from burning to burying, because during incineration or burying, we are separating those metals with the wind, with the ash, the fumes, also in the site itself. It's not an available way to get rid of our wastes. Also, burying them. The first was burning. The burying, with the burying, there is a higher risk of losing these heavy metals with the leaches from these sites, and which can easily get to the groundwater. We will not see it, and it will be seem a much better way for getting rid of our wastes. But in fact, it have a high risk of contaminating our groundwater and drinking water. So I'm not agree with both of them. That's why we are now trying to go for alternative solutions like compositing. Compositing is a very good solution, and we can, with compositing for organic waste and recycling for industrial waste, we can find another alternative and much better solutions for our wastes. This is the question I saw. I don't know if there is.
Okay, then very much Thankful to you, ma'am. And we have our head of the department, Dr. Ashok Acharya, and I would like to request him for a vote of thanks. Acharya, sir. Hello. Hello, sir. Sorry, sir, your voice is not coming. You are not audible. Please, sir, Dr. Ashok Acharya, sir, you are not audible. Please check your device. No, sir, it's some problem. I think your your voice is not coming here. You are not audible, sir. I think check your device. First, sir, you unmute yourself. Okay, you have unmuted. Nivedan, sir, is there any problem with him? Are you here? Sir, you are already unmute. You are unmute, sir, but voice is not coming. Okay, then I think there is some problem with sir. No matter, man. I'm very much thankful on behalf of the Department of Chemistry, Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee University, for your nice lectures, your nice presentation here. And I am also thankful to Dr. Shilpa Sharma ma'am. Both of you have joined in our program. And definitely participants are very much benefited by your interesting lecture. And question answer session was also very good. And I hope that you will again facilitate us with your company and we get some more lectures from you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be with you today. I'm very happy to share my experience and my ideas with you. Of course, I'm gonna send my PPT for you, and you have the permission to share it with all of our participants. So this information, the main aim of this presentation is the raise the global awareness of the dangerous and the serious problem about heavy metal toxicity and soil pollution. In this way, we can send this information to the much number, the higher number of scholars, researchers, and participants, and then they have the message to deliver it to the lecture students and others. In this way, we can raise the global awareness of this serious problem.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your nice words. Thank you very much. And just this is the official end of this webinar. Thank you very much. Thank you all participants for your participation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. See you.